Hey everyone, welcome. So I wanted to share something a little different this time, something really special to me and I think unique. This is a lecture from John Watkiss, one of 5 that I was able to record when I was a student of his. And John Watkiss is by far, I think, one of the most amazing and influential teachers I've had, and the most mind-blowing in terms of teaching ability, artistic ability, creative ability. The principles that I learned from him in his classes influenced the way I use anatomy, teach myself, think about composition. It was the most complex teaching around the figure that I had encountered. John is was an esteemed illustrator. He did everything, worked for everyone, comics, visual development for Disney. The biggest impact he had on me was just as a student of his. There's a number of books and pamphlets that you can find on John. Sadly, he did pass away very young at the age of 55. So I wanted to share one of the lectures that I was able to record. It's, again, older, but I think the wealth of the content it's invaluable. And so while I do feel a little weird about sharing something that is not of my own, I've been sitting on these for nearly 25 years, and I think it's a shame not to share them, to not have John's kind of genius and ability to communicate and teach still impacting people in some way. Yeah, I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to, in this video, I'll be including all of links to John's teaching materials in the bottom so that you can access those if you're interested. Thanks.
This evening, great composition. Foreshortening, when limbs are bent and in awkward angles, how do we deal with this? And there is a way to do it without tedious measurement. It's a geometrical solution. So I'm going to sort of invent, I'll draw a frame around it first. Frame is the most important thing because I'm a photographer, a live drawing artist with a sense of aperture. So I'm going into the space now to confine there, and I'm going to compose. Now I'm going to think for something with 3/4 foreshortening with legs and arms. If you bear with me while I just very quickly sketch out an idea that gives me an excuse to do foreshortening. Then I'm going to isolate each one of these aspects, and these tricky elements of legs being folded over one another, beyond the sketchiness of this, how do we coolly think of it in isolation? Well, the pelvis should be considered first, and the connection with the legs. 2 points getting there. Well, straight lines should be defined first, directional. Very, very calmly stated. Now, for argument's sake, what I've done is I've started off with a very sort of sketchy, slightly curvy way to backtrack and you go back to a cooler approach to things, which I recommend that we do this before we do anything bring an outline. But I had to get the figure sketched in for us to take a look at what's going on. You notice when these lines are formed, they form triangles. No matter how extreme they are, these triangles are the key to understanding the correct perspective. When I'm doing this with my arms, I'm creating a variety of triangular shapes, no matter what perspective it is. It's always there. And the same with the legs, they form a triangle. So foreshortening can be understood in terms of squash and stretch, triangle. Excuse me. And then once we've realized the accurate foreshortening of a limb, it's then that we can do the wraparound cylindrical aspect to it. Like that, to realize the through and through aspect. Now the most important thing to do then, and remember the triangle is guiding us with this. The thing to do is to have the correct elliptical relationship. So this ellipse has a very, very specific perspective to it compared to this one, which has that specific quality to it. So don't generalize with ellipses, but be very, very specific with it. Look at this ellipse, for example, this leg here, and out as you can see this border is going a bit strange here, but see that leg crossed over there, like that, it's a shape. So the perspective of this leg crossed over this one has an elliptical quality of that nature. This has an ellipse of that nature. It's very easy when one is drawing cylinders to make cylinders all very similar to one another, having the same perspective. It's crucial that these ellipses are at the right tilt when it comes to understanding these complex, twisty forms together. Including the pelvis, which is another ellipse right there, and where the pelvis is placed in the ellipse, which is this. Everything is an elliptical relationship. That goes for this part of the body too. Remember last week I discussed the shoulders being a triangle, and then the body, two straight lines here, and a center line. And then from that point onwards, never draw the arms without really rationalizing what's beyond them, of course, which is the chest here like this. And then start to draw the arms and get the direction. Let's say this is like a train track here. You bought your tickets here, you wanted to get there, and the way to do it is to make sure in straight lines that you arrive at the correct destination before doing something Baroque or Rococo and then arriving over here because you started with the outside line and the contours and ended up in the wrong place, consequently destroying the design of it. So this is a design issue. The way they look together, the way they tumble together, the way they interlock is a design issue. And the design issue is facilitated by the correct perspective relationship also. So, having done that, or brief relationship study of the arms, and look how I'm staying them together. And you noticed that when I did the first lecture here about 2 weeks ago, I said to make things asymmetrical in their placement. So instead of something more, like this, breaking up, and make it look interesting. So whenever you're posing a model down the line, create things which are irregular, sort of like this, but never this, or this, or something that looks like this. So you can see the difference between this triangle, look how slight that is, it forms a triangle, and this one here, that's like that. So try and get into this idea of studying triangles with different sense of perspective on. Make deliberate dot notations there. And then you can put the elliptical correctness on the top of it like that. And look at this one. This will be literally, we'll be looking straight onto it. And then everything is connected. You can see that beyond this, it's important to get this down also. When arms are folded across the body, draw the body first. Don't draw the arms on top of nothing underneath. Really construct the root. But have perspective of this nature. Look at this. The big. So that's made up of very tightly constructed ellipses to give the foot that kind of quality here, and yet right down here, made up these shapes. It's amazing what the power of line can communicate regarding perspective. It's much tighter. Take a look at it. Isolated. Big toe. Got lots of little toes there. That's the angle. Look at that for perspective on a foot. That's slightly in the back of the heel, slightly underneath, but on top as well. Very challenging. And the perspective is that. This one's a little easier. A good way of drawing the foot is to draw it as a door wedge, then separate the big toe out from it, or rather like that. It's a nice idea of solidity, so that when the leg bones arrive, they've got a platform to land on right there. Very cozy. Fine. And if I drew ellipses across the front of this, it'll give you this kind of quality. Over the back leg. This is an excellent introduction for being able to do figure invention. You don't need a model. You can work out all the twists and turns and perspectives just by working in this way and understanding these very subtle turns on these ellipses. And then you'll find beyond all these, what I call semi-micro ellipses, the big picture of the ellipses, which is this. Neck, then finally the head. This is a great exercise as a means to an end. This is not meant to be a thing that one will look at afterwards and go, wow, look at all those spring coil perspectives. This is a way of getting sensitized to understanding the figure in its most complete and solid way. It sort of makes you intimate with absolutely everything. Because what people tend to do sometimes is not draw things through. And they draw shapes together and not through. So this prevents that from happening. But remember, before all these volumes are realized, and on the other seminars I've said that the volume comes in at stage 3, the most important thing is to get these straight lines correctly placed, and the points of departure and points of arrival stated before any Baroqueisms of line. The anatomical beauty of the leg, which I'll draw here, as it's folding over the other leg, is very appealing and has a beautiful tempting, distracting line quality to it. Asymmetry of the kneecap. Very alluring to look at lines like that goes to make up the leg, and when one sees it, one is tempted to want to get it straight away out. I can't blame you. It's very beautiful. This is more important to get you there. I want drawings to go in this direction. I'm not going to be here that long, but I hope you can take your drawings in the direction where you could just do beautiful linear drawings, where everything looks solid and very, very convincing, without any of this construction. But until then, I think it's good to construct, because you'll know it's been honestly arrived at. I'm going to do one more perspective foreshortened pose, and then I'm going to go on to pattern cutting in the human form, which means introducing anatomy by means of pattern and not by muscle. And once again, I composed the figure within the space so that it wasn't centrally placed. By the way, before I rub off this leg, look at the asymmetry of it. Look at this. Look at this. Center, top center aspect of the kneecap. People have a tendency to, when they draw kneecaps, putting them bang in the center of the leg. It isn't there at all. It's either over to the right on the left leg. This is where I'm going to switch my brains a bit about this. Or it's on the left leg it's over to the left, and on the right leg it's over to the right. So I think things to remember. These counter angles, sharp on one side here, smooth on the other side here, like that. So different textural things happening of the femur bone, and that's a rigid bone that sticks through. It creates a beautiful design at the front of the knee. The ankles are asymmetrical. This one is like a little round ball on the outside, and this one is larger and more pointy on the inside. Things to remember that gives that beautiful, subtle sense of realism. Consequently, if we're thinking more about what is in terms of design, our line work will be beautiful. If we think in terms of doing beautiful lines, we may be insincere to the subject. So lines should happen unconsciously. This is Art Centre School of Design, so I think this is a fit subject to keep on impressing design.
say in your drawings you draw, you don't do the construction, you do it in your head and you just draw the lines that you need,
Yes.
but you visualize.
Yes, I do, yes. I'm always thinking of what aesthetically pleasing dominantly, and then I find a way of trying to get that across, and usually it's anatomical and then compositional. Okay, so, let me lie down a little bit there. Difference between these two perspectives. Sometimes this chalk behaves better than at other times. So you can see what I'm doing over that. Fine. It's a very subtle issue, but the difference between node ellipses and node ellipses has to be grasped. Because that affects the way this shoulder feels on this side. Once the shoulder is a triangle, beyond that the neck is cylinder. But it's triangles, ultimately, that we're looking at. It's key. So when you're looking at the model, check the shape of the triangle in perspective and foreshortening with the shape on your page and make it exactly like. And then, of course, this continues on through the figure, all over the top of the shoulders, into the neck, then to the back of the head, so on and so on. And it's good to do all this with a hard pencil, and then draw over it with soft pencils. So with legs bent and doing these kinds of things, it's good to see them like this to begin with. Two triangles. Because if you see them as triangles, you can then get an idea of how short this line is compared to this line here. And that will tell you that how far it's going back. This one is far more straightforward, but you can compare these two with that. And that's a good thing to work with. Then, once you feel that this works right, and you have your points of departure and your points of arrival sorted out, and it has to be exactly right before you go to the next stage in terms of the dynamic placement, you can then go to the solid. And this is where the magic starts to work, where you can really develop a wonderful sense of perspective. Yeah, thank you. But we've got the drawing. Line on that side and we'll shallow. Now, outside of the rounds of working out foreshortening here like this for the legs, there are patterns to observe in the legs. And I won't go the leg top to bottom as I've done before here, this one in particular. Take a look at this and see what the effect it has when we convert it to a foreshortened leg. See what these shapes do when this leg is bent. Look at this large shape. I put together a book recently, which I think it's a good sum total of everything I've been studying, and I'm going to be putting it out soon. It's very intensive, but it's working on simple language of muscle groupings as an introduction to complex musculature, so that we first see muscle groupings in terms of tumbling ellipses, which give a sense of the design of anatomy as opposed to the detail of it, which I think is preferable than having to deal with the morbid exactness of tendons and stuff like that, which I could besiege you with, but I don't think it's going to do you any favours. So, how does it affect this leg from a design point of view? This is larger, that's this. This is the vastus externus or the rectus femoris combined. Then vastus medialis, this is gastrocnemius and tibulus anterius combined. Sharper inner thigh, lower. So can you see how understanding this helps us to understand this? And then we incorporate ellipses into that. So we've got two things going on here. We've got the elliptical and the flat design concept. And those two things that you should bring together is an efficient way of dealing both with form and anatomy as an introduction to a very complicated subject, anatomy itself. And another element, recognizing certain points on the body that will give us, I put the kneecap here, the ankle bone, the triangle. The design of the foot being a door wedge, look. This then leads us to the conception, just a beautiful realization. Fluid contour. So does that sequence make sense to you? Yes? To reiterate, direction, lines of action, same language I've been using all the way along the line. Straight lines. Design, foreshortening seen in terms of geometric triangular. Then awareness of pattern and design of muscle groupings, not muscle fibers, that influence different viewpoints on the leg in perspective. Let's take a look at this leg now. In relationship to this consideration here. That's this. Yes. Rest it off and resolve. The way the kneecap arrives at the end of the leg, it's not like in a corner, it sits blunts what would be a corner here at that angle like that. Or is that front? Door wedge seam from the start. The design of the inside of the leg, based on this conception. You see this, this, this. This part of the gastrocnemius of this outer part here is this particular ellipse here, sharp on the inner side. That ankle bone is drawn as a circle, but the triangle, giving it full dynamic. And one thing I'd like you to take a look at is the difference between this side as an asymmetrical element and the inside. Try and really think about that, because it's a beautiful contrast. Okay, so I'll do a linear concept, how I feel about that now. Yeah. Yes? What was that difference that you just done? Just excuse me for one moment while I just finish this. The difference between the outside contour here, subject to this design, and look on the inside, how it affects the inside of the leg. It's the difference between the two. Because the reason why I say what seems to be the obvious is people have a propensity to draw the leg equal on both sides. And that's why I, in this manual that I'll be putting out, is I'm going to be emphasizing the symmetrical compared with the asymmetrical. Now, what is the symmetrical? What are the symmetrical elements? Does anyone know?
The whole body is symmetrical.
But when you say the whole body, not feet or
Cut it in half for me. It's asymmetrical. Bilateral ways, the whole body is, but yeah. I don't know if any individual sections.
You need a rib cage. Carry on. The pelvis, I guess. Go on. The head. So it's the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis is symmetrical. And it sounds like a really obvious thing to say, and I've said this before, but people, and this is the strangest thing, I've seen this happen, they actually make the symmetrical parts of the body asymmetrical, and the unsymmetrical symmetrical. It's the weirdest thing. And that's why I'm kind of saying the obvious, because, by the way, folks, the obvious is very rarely said, and the most complex things are eulogized. Okay, so I'm going to bend the back of the leg in relationship to the design of the back of the leg. If you can remember these shapes, you'll be going a long way to understanding dimensional complex anatomy. Look at that continual line running through there. Because you're not going to be medical students if you're going to study anatomy. That's if you want to. You're going to be designers and artists, so you need to turn anatomy into an issue of design. Oh, just for argument's sake, before I go any further, I'm going to show you the origin of this particular civic bike group. Please don't try this at home. Only less than 1 watt. This chalk is too thick for you to get into all the juice and it's necessary. Well, necessary. This is the leg with its complex weave of very, very beautiful muscles. And I can name them all and I can speak them all out to you, but I don't think if I did this from the side, from the back, looking down, looking up with all the muscles drawn, be honest with me, would you really appreciate it? Apart from saying, okay, she knows muscles. What I'm doing when I'm doing this, I'm communicating the essence of the design of the muscle group, which is far more valuable than an introduction to prestiging you with this. You wouldn't have the time to copy something like this. It's a beautiful design, the leg is. We had a lesson in design once again about it. It's just unbelievable. I think this is preferable so we can get to understand this. So later on, when we see this, we can connect with it and go, boy, I can see those irregularities now. And just to be sure that I'm assuming that you would go on, who would prefer, just put your hands up, have it simplified like this, please, have a vote. Who enjoys the complexity of my mind and would want to be besieged by it? You would? So you're outvoted, then. Right, okay, let's take a look back to that.
But in simplifying that helps to see the irregularity. Right?
Later on, I'm hoping that you'll go and look at the muscles then and see what it means to be an artist looking at muscles. Not someone who ends up just copying the muscles and still doesn't know anything about it. Because you can draw muscles and you can still have morbidly accurate looking drawings with no life whatsoever in them. There's something else going on here with the artist and the model, and that's a personality, a sense of flair, a sense of poetry, whatever. Anything but just muscles. Muscles are kind of the manifestation of the life force. But what is the life force? How do we connect with it? And it's usually a design issue of some kind. So, here's the back of the leg. Here, once again, a rudimentary. That's straight lines. That's a piece. That's a ellipse. That's a higher angle ellipse. Oh, what the hell up? There. One big circle. I'm sure you would agree that the monkey did follow. Watch the tumbling ellipses there. The tumbling ellipse shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a circle at the back, which I think Gilbernius tells us. The whole object of this elliptical exercise, which will be explored even further in this book that I'm about to finish, is to see the tumbling aspect of forms and appreciate the asymmetry that's caused by these ellipses tumbling down and never arriving like two balloons in the same space. Because when the leg bends like this, whoa, what do you do with it? How do you understand it? You can only understand it really by seeing it in these terms first and then watching the effects like we saw here. Look on the outside of the leg, I drew a straight line, but on the inside I drew an ellipse. That's because the tendon of the biceps femoris, which is this area here, is very thin and very tendinous, yet there are two heads of tendons reaching down into the bottom fibula and tibia down here. So I symbolize that as a more narrow ellipse. Give a little bit of difference. If they're just two straight lines. When the leg bends and we have a foreshortening quality to it, this. So where our ellipse we really out. Inside ellipse there. This one here. So here. That's fatter. This is just a straight line here, which is that one. Insert is there. And once again, we've got the top. Something more radical. Still thinking of this. The ellipses are still there. Carve is higher on the outside and lower on the inside. That's a good thing to keep in mind. I do a high, broad outer curve here. So bring it right into the end from there, straight to the os pelvis. This is the door wedge seen from underneath. Just a simple block wedge for the hip. Now, the lines of action here are down to that. And believe it or not, there's still here the very slight triangle. It's that narrow. I'll do it again, so that's from it. It's so close. But it helps to draw that first sometimes to get the correct. This is a very tricky, very subtle piece of foreshortening. Everything's very close and very tight. Okay, we're going to take a look at the body in general as a pattern cutting exercise now that I've introduced the legs and the break. Okay, so let's think about it then. So, I've introduced you to some patterns in the leg. You're going to draw the whole figure now with a pattern reductionist system. Always remember a good, long central line. Because central line gives us a feel for what's symmetrical and what isn't. Each a good light drawing is really expressing the symmetrical compared with the asymmetrical. But bear with me while I just construct pattern now. You notice I draw the lines of action first before I consider the pattern. Cage and pelvic. These points that I'm making are very, very important notation points because they're major connection points for the muscles where they converge and gather. And you can see them on the surface of the body as an anomalous on the passport later we'll be looking for. There's another good slot point, another one here. So you'll find that these shapes will tally with your other notes from the previous couple of weeks. So I've had people tell me that the pelvis area is the most difficult to study. It's so taking a special sort of reference in this area here. Have a good look at these shapes. Bowl-like shape called aponeurosis. You know, some people's term. The abdominal wall sitting on side and trying in the groin area and the lips here. These are the most efficient ways that I can think of in pattern cutting terms to understand all these complex transitions all the way down the body without getting bogged down with muscle fibers. Now, if you want to double check what's behind all this, it's our friend Skelly. Skelly the skeleton. If you feel like you're losing your way whilst drawing these patterns because the lines of action have to be right, double check with this kind of shape. Imagine this shape underneath. Those lines of action. 2 points here, here. Fit just here like that, so you can see the relationship of the pelvis inside, behind the patterns. But the key to understanding all these patterns is that this part of the body here, bring it in tighter, is symmetrical. Everything else beyond the body is eastern. So have a good look at those shapes and then compare them with tunnel shapes outside of that. See in the shoulders, that ellipse is there, that one is there, this one is here, that one is there, and at no point are these ellipses alike or coinciding with one another. Look. You can take a dotted line down the center of the forms to give yourself a sense of the asymmetry of these forms. It could also be the symbol of the line of action you see in the skeleton here. So, what does knowing this affect in terms of drawing contour? We'll draw one side of the body. See what it needs. I recommend you try this exercise of drawing the figure with one line or lines sketched into one another I was more or less aiming for a contour effect that looks convincingly human without the use of shadows. After you've explored the contour pattern with it. The reason why I say this is because I've seen people who can throw fancy shadows all over the place, but still yet know nothing about the human form. What they know about is technique. What technique do you put the photographer for? But when the model is not in front of them and they're asked to draw the figure, I can't do it. So this is a test on your anatomical preparedness. Draw a figure, the contour, no shading, no cross-hatching, just the essential design of the rhythms of the contours, which are ultimately really the most beautiful aspects of figures of life. If you look at the Greek vases, the figures on them, they are deceptively simplistic, but they try and copy one of them. It's very difficult to get that kind of exquisite simplicity. So my contour lines have been informed by my asymmetrical considerations within the leg, and this was informed by symmetrical considerations in the torso. While I'm on this subject as looking at the front of the figure, I'm going to show you the origin of the shapes of shadows on the body and how to understand how when the light is cast on the form, and this is as far as I'm going to go regarding light and shade, how a shadow shape comes about on the body, because I've been at schools where people are encouraged to shine a spotlight on the figure and copy the shapes of the shadows. And yet they still don't know anything about figure construction, because this is technique and the correct use of the pencil. So I'm going to demonstrate a more informed way of thinking about light and shade. Let's take this viewpoint and turn it 3/4 and do a close-up shot of the body. Now, I'm very intimate with shadows, and I worked on a film in England called Caravaggio, and then that guy was obsessed with shadow. And I've learned about the deceptive nature of shadows. That's why I'm talking about it. All right. See this line here? Chest, the rib cage, abdominal wall, continued with the external oblique here, make this contour, the leg there. To find out the light, when the light is shining at an angle like this from a window, which is always ideal, what the true nature of the shadow side and its shape is, in theory, without copying, you use what I call the mirror contour. The change in perspective in the form based on the turn of the ribs occurs around this area here. It's like a block. We consider it. We take this line here and we invert it. You can't see this line it's like here. So I mirrored this contour. Then you bring it into a lock-in jigsaw concept here in this side of the portion of the body. This line here I've mirrored again. This line here I've mirrored again that way. I use the broad edge of the chalk. That's how I arrived at the true nature of the shadow side of the body. From there to there. You reverse the contour. Right. The same can't be said for the arms, because why can't the same be said for the arms, by the way? Does anyone know? That's asymmetrical, so we have to think a little bit harder about that. But with symmetrical form, we can guarantee that will turn out to be a successful consideration. Then you can weave into the light like this, with whatever medium you use. That's a consideration for you to take down the line when you're dealing with a model which is quite heavily lit. But once again, don't be deceived by theatrical lighting on things. It won't guarantee any information. In fact, form is lost in light and shade, not gained. When you deal with a lit model, whatever, try and make the lighting as bright as possible so you're dealing with contour. Effectively, you're dealing with silhouette, which is the strongest principle for understanding composition, silhouette. Light and shade diminishes silhouette. Light and shade does not guarantee a strong sense of design. Light and shade is only useful when one is illustrating a pulp novel, or a detective story, or the life story in Caravaggio. But know where it's appropriate. And don't just do heavy light shade on every darn thing. There's a group of comic strip artists out there under the publishers of Image Comics, and they draw people baring their teeth on every occasion. You can imagine them having a cup of coffee in the morning and they're going to the dentist. Well, they're going to be appropriate. Going to the doctors. I got a problem. They're constantly showing their teeth. Somehow they're being paid by the dentures in these pages. This is someone who's got an angle on what the business, the latest publishers want. It's angry veins on neck. Learn how to draw 1,000,000 veins on the neck. I'm sorry this is adolescent. If you want to be a really serious designer, forget that. Because when that goes out, you're going to just be looked like an idiot and nobody wants to know. Oh, he's part of that veins on the neck movement. Oh, God, didn't that suck? I mean, everybody's in denial afterwards. I've seen it happen. So that's another thing, for not following trends too seriously. Okay, if you have to make some freelance work every now and again, do it. But have higher values that you stand by. Because principles are more important than techniques. Principles are more important than dentures. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the hand now and deal with it in terms of a pattern code. Thank you. Typically, I'm going to start with the bone first, and then backtrack. And the key bone to remember, this one here, because this presents the hand in the light of asymmetry. This is the biggest, this is the biggest knuckle. So you'll see what that means as I demonstrate some different views. So just draw that center line running down that particular figure. That's a center line you'll always draw when you draw the hand. You'll see what the value of that is too. Now, palm of the hand, there is a group of stroke is better than others. Muscle works like that, and works like that, and I'm really meditating. One is more like leaf shape. Start with that circle here, and on there. And this one is more like a balloon shape. And these are the palmar muscles. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick back view now. Notice there's only 3 bones in the thumb. There are 4 bones in the pelvis. And their placement is rather like that in the palm of the hand. You see that this one, the big one, rises this one here on the back. Big knuckle. Big knuckle. Smaller knuckle next to it like that. Dropping down. That's dropping down each side, built on this bridge of bones here. They're built like a little Thomas Kincaid bridge. Everybody loves Thomas Kincaid. So, yes, there are those who are copying Thomas Kincaid out there, and after the trend is over, there will be denials.
Copies of Thomas Kincaid?
Yes, there are many copyists of Thomas Kincaid out there right now, and after the fad is over, they'll say, "I know, no, I didn't. Yeah, that wasn't me." Okay, and at the back of the hand is another massive muscle here. And this one sometimes pops from behind like that. See, that's as simple as I could make it. So you've got these two significant, I say, arrangements of muscle in the palm of the hand. That one, and that one. And I've really very, very much simplified it in terms of the pattern. But the thing to keep an eye on is this line here when you draw the hand, right there. And you can see how asymmetrical the hand is. And you notice how the fingers all have this need to go, in this stage, magnetic north towards this fella here. So our hands have this, our fingers have this propensity towards curving in towards that finger. that, especially when the hand is relaxed, it will have a tendency to move towards that finger next to the index finger, the one with the largest thumb. Now I'm going to simplify this so that we can see it in sculptural terms. Tapered rectangle with a triangle attached to it. Triangle being here, tapered rectangle being there. And then just do this magnetic north with that figure there. 3. I've got rid of the palm bones to separate it out. So you've got 4 diminishing lines that more or less do that, and 2 more which more or less do that to the thumb. Same goes for the back of the hand. This is a great mass for just knocking in the general shape of the hand. But then that magnetic north thing there, fingers reaching towards it. 3, 2, so this shape is giving us this shape here. This shape, you can see it's back, giving us that shape there. This is an ideal geometric design for the palm of the hand. Yeah. You'll see what I mean when we do this with it. So I'm going to demonstrate in a moment. This isn't just a fixed block that I've drawn, but it's actually this bending. It curves like this. And I'm doing this at the moment. And then when I add cylinders and wrap them around these separated out strands, these lines are just a directional flow curve, and then micro cylinders are added around. The leafy is doing things like this then. There's block shape inside there. But from this, I'm getting more organic. You notice from the straights, more organic there. We feel. That's the difference between those two shapes there and part of the hand. That's the triangle at the side. The block here. See? And then the other side of the hand, this side here. This block side, tapered little pinky. Having a cup E, pinky. That's the block. That's the triangle popping out inside there. Lines of action. You draw the lines of action of the fingers first and then apply those cylinders around them. Triangle, block, finger, thumb, this is the compression. One. Now that piece of muscle that was on the inside, the back of the hand there, really shows and connects to this finger here. That knuckle, the big one, really sticks through. Right there. That's really swelled in this position. That is situated here. Okay, so we're going to start doing some drawing now. And we're going to deal with foreshortening issues and designs which will be involved in these foreshortening issues. All the pattern cutting exercises that I've done here, we can apply and look